would you handle the Federal Reserve as president, and what do you think about the push by the Republicans to have the Fed audited?
A good, important issue. When I was involved in Dodd-Frank, the major piece of financial legislation, we managed to get an amendment for the first time in the history of the United States passed that didn't audit the Fed in its entirety, but did audit the Fed during the financial crisis. And boy, did we learn a lot. And Bloomberg, by the way, was active in that effort as well. I think they brought forth a lawsuit. But what we found out is that during the financial crisis, $16 trillion in zero or low interest loans was lent out to virtually every financial institution, major financial institution in the United States and central banks all over the world. $16 trillion, zero or low interest loans in a revolving loan fund. And yet working families today have to figure out how they're going to pay 7 or 8% interest rates for their kids to go to college. So maybe we should practice low interest loans for working families and not just greedy financial institutions. In terms of auditing the Fed, that is legislation that I was on. Here's an example of strange bedfellows coming together. Ron Paul and I worked together on that legislation, of which we managed to pass some of it in the bill. So the idea of auditing the Fed does make sense to me.
Can you explain to us and my members why we should be supportive of your stance on financial institutions?
Yes. Okay. It's a huge issue. Here's where we are. And by the way, this has been my view for a very long time. We have 6 of the largest financial institutions in this country who have assets equivalent, assets of about $10 trillion, which is equivalent to about 60% of the GDP of the United States. So point number one, you have a handful of huge financial institutions that have enormous economic clout. They issue a significant amount of the mortgages in this country and the credit cards in this country. So the first issue is, for a vibrant economy, do we think it is a good idea for a handful of financial institutions to have that much economic clout? Is that what a vibrant free enterprise economy is about? I think not. And to be honest with you, I think if Teddy Roosevelt were alive today, he would come in here and say, you got to break these guys up. They're too big, they're too powerful. Second point, everybody in this room understands what happened in 2008. And let's be very clear. In my view, to a significant degree, the business model of Wall Street is not to get money out to your people, to small businesses. I believe in a boring banking system. People put money into banks. Banks lend out money to small and medium-sized businesses who create jobs, help people buy homes with mortgages. That's called old-fashioned, boring banking. That's what I believe in. What Wall Street has done is create a business model which says we really don't care about small and medium-sized businesses. What we care is about being an island unto ourselves, coming up with the most esoteric financial tools imaginable that nobody in the world knows, but enables Wall Street to make huge, huge amounts of money in highly dangerous and speculative activities. That led us to the Wall Street crash of 2008, which created the worst economic downturn since the Great Recession. I personally believe that the business model of Wall Street is fraud. I do not trust these guys. I do not believe these guys. I do not believe that they care about the economy of America. I think they care about themselves. I want a banking system where you have small, medium-sized banks where your people can walk in and somebody says, I know who you are, I know your history, you're going to get a reasonable price loan. You're part of the community. I know you. I do not want to have people as an island unto themselves, separate from the productive economy. So I believe very much, number one, and this has been my view for many, many years, if you check my record, you will find when I was in the House, I was a member of the House Financial Services Committee that dealt with deregulation. And we had the Clinton people, and we had the Republicans coming before us. And you remember what they said? They said, it's a great idea if we merge investment banks with commercial banks, with large insurance companies. It'll be great for us internationally. I never believed it for 1 second, fought against it. So, to my mind, what we have to do is, A, reestablish Glass-Steagall, maintain those separate entities, but second of all, more importantly, we have got to break them up. I think the economy will do much better. I think your people, small businesses, will have access to affordable loans much more readily than is currently the case.
And you shouldn't have to be a Fortune 500 company to get a loan. For many small businesses, these loans have always come from community banks with deep local pockets. But today, those same local banks are being squeezed by regulations that don't make sense for their size and mission, like endless examinations and paperwork designed for banks that measure their assets in the many billions. And when it gets harder for small banks to do their jobs, it gets harder for small businesses to get their loans. We can ease these burdens for community banks without harming consumers and without letting up one bit on Wall Street. We should not apply the same restrictions on community banks as those needed to regulate our big banks. Now let's be clear about this. It's not the big banks that need relief from Washington. It's small banks and small businesses. We should be doing more to rein in risky behavior on Wall Street and too big to fail banks, not less. I fully support the regulations from Dodd-Frank on the big banks, but we should pass common sense community banking reform right now. However, the Republicans in the Congress insist on using this issue to give relief to community banks as a Trojan horse for rolling back protections for consumers and rolling back the rules on the biggest banks, as we're seeing right now in legislation that Republicans are introducing. We should call this what it is, a cynical attempt to game the system for those at the top. Our goal should be helping community banks serve their neighbors and customers the way they always have, to make it easier to give out responsible loans to responsible small businesses so they can do what they do best, create jobs, and help families get ahead and stay ahead.
Senator Sanders has talked about how if he's president, he would raise taxes. In fact, he said to CNN's Jake Tapper he would raise them substantially higher than they are today on big corporations, on wealthy Americans. Would you?
I will be laying out my own economic policies. Again, everybody has to run his or her own campaign, and I'm going to be telling the American people what I propose and how I think it will work, and then we'll let voters make up their minds. I'm going to put out my policies, and I'll let other people speak to their policies, because I think we have to both grow the economy faster and fairer. So we have to do what will actually work in the short term, the medium term, and the long term. I will be making a speech about my economic proposals on Monday, and then I look forward to the debate about them.